Hello, and welcome to the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report. I'm Betsy Cribb, and today we have with us Captain Bucky Miller of the Lexington Police Department. Thank you so much for being here, Captain Miller.
Thank you for having me, Betsy.
Alrighty, Captain Miller, so would you just talk briefly about your background, how long you've been working for the Lexington Police Department?
I've been in the city of Lexington for 29 years. I've worked in the police department for 29 years. I came right from Virginia State, which is the college I went to. I was lucky enough to actually be employed by WNL for a year and then became a policeman shortly thereafter.
And you're currently the acting police chief.
Yes, my chief hopefully will be back soon. He had surgery and is doing great.
How are your responsibilities different when you're acting chief versus when you're police captain?
It just added more. I'm actually trying to do his job and my job, and it's fun, but I'll be glad when he's back.
So Lexington's a pretty safe town. There's not a whole lot of violent crime, no huge traffic problems, no gang violence. So our major issues, it seems like, are things like embezzlement, sexual assault, domestic violence. Is that right?
I would say that's true, but I think people a lot of times don't realize that Lexington is so close to the interstate, and if you study crime and criminals, what you learn a lot of times is that they'll use the interstate as their two routes and getaway routes. So even though our crime is low right now, it could change. It could change at any time because we have 64 and 81, and we're a hub, and everybody knows it's a college town.
So what kind of trouble do the interstates bring into Lexington?
We get people who, most criminals don't want to commit crimes in their own home. So a lot of them will travel down the interstate. They'll bring drugs. They'll come in at night, maybe harass people at night. So that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to keep under control.
So what would you say the biggest issue with drugs is in Lexington?
What kind of drugs, or the biggest issue with drugs?
Biggest issue with drugs.
I wonder sometimes if as a community that sometimes we don't just, because Lexington's such a little sleepy place, whether sometimes we forget as a community how bad drugs really are and how many people it really affects. It just doesn't affect the person that uses the drugs. It affects the whole community as a whole because it affects that person's family and friends of that person's family. So a lot of times I think as communities we forget, we look at a drug person or a drug dealer and we go, oh yeah, Johnny was dealing drugs, but we forget about Johnny's mom and his brother and his friends.
So with the drugs, do you think that's something that started in Rockbridge County and Lexington, or do you think that's one of those things that's been a byproduct of being a town right off of these two big interstates?
There's always been drugs in Lexington. It's no different than any other town. We have enough of our own homegrown drug people here to keep us busy, but I'm sure that some of the drugs do come in from other places, and the interstate just makes it that much easier.
Has it become a bigger problem over the past several years?
I think the kinds of drugs and the way they affect you. It used to be marijuana. Now you've got meth. You've got bath salts. You have different kind of drugs that affect people more violently, causes people to be more paranoid. And I look for us really to see a spike, just like all neighborhoods, a spike in the use of these drugs. So what I would ask is, as the WNL community, the Lexington community, is watch your friends, keep up with your friends, be good neighbors. Look for little subtle changes, because if we don't look out for each other, then no one will. So I think that's how you keep your town safe, is that you look out for each other.
And you talk about the sense of community and looking out for each other. How would you describe the relationship between the Washington and Lee community and the Lexington community at large?
I think a lot of times that the Washington Lee community sells itself short. A lot of times people think, they're students, they live on the hill, and sometimes you even hear that from students. And I think people would be surprised if they realized how much the student population, and I usually don't, everybody's Lexington to me, but that the student population does for Rockbridge County as a whole. They go into our schools, they mentor our kids, they're big brothers, they're big sisters, they're coaches, they do volunteer work, they raise funds. And I think those things get lost in some of the other mud that we have. And I would love to see more of that brought out. Put in the newspaper when you've got a fraternity that's done so many hours of volunteer work. When you've got a young man or woman who's coaching little league teams. Praise that up, put it in the newspaper so that everybody, including the students that are doing it, realizes, that is important, and it's important to the community.
When you talk about recognizing all the good things, but the bad things definitely don't go unnoticed either. So how do you deal with things like the weekend party scene and the noise and the trash?
I think this has been a college town forever. I think the key part is that we need to make the WNL students feel like they're more a part of the community, that they just don't come here for 9 months and do whatever they want and then leave. It's no, you're part of this community year-round, whether you're here or not. What you do in the community actually reflects what happens at the school. Be good neighbors. That's, everybody wants to have a party and everybody wants to have a good time. Just be responsible when you do. If you're a fraternity house and you're in a neighborhood or close to a neighborhood, sometimes you just got to think, you know what, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, the police really haven't come by, which is a good thing. Maybe we should shut ourselves down. Oh my gosh, we wake up early in the morning and there's trash everywhere. Well, we know that's not our neighbor's trash. Maybe we need to clean the trash up. But more important is you need to take care of each other. What really worries me as a policeman in Lexington is, and always has, is when I see young men and women walking alone by themselves in the middle of the night, and especially young ladies who think, oh, I've got this cell phone, I'm so safe. No, what the bad guy's going to do is let the person on the cell phone listen to whatever he's going to do to you. So, if you got friends, walk together. If you've got a friend that you can tell that's intoxicated, take them to the infirmary, take them home, but take care of each other. And I think the more we do that, the more sense of community is going to come out. Because you guys always say you're your own community. Take care of each other. Act like that you are.
Okay, so you're talking about, the party scene and how it's changed, but how too has the relationship with the Lexington Police Department and the students changed over the 29 years you've been here?
I'm not sure it's as close as it used to be. I think one of the keys is that, we're always going to be policemen and they're always going to be students, and they kind of look at us as their Lexington parents who are here to terrorize and break up their fun, which is far from the truth. We want you to have fun and we want you to have a good time, but we also want you to understand that we're going to respect you. We want you to respect us and your neighbors and yourself, which would cut down on most of the conflicts that we do have when we do have them, because you can't think that we're picking on you, because everybody thinks we're picking on them. So it's obviously we're doing a good job and we're spreading the wealth. So we're not. We react to calls. And once you understand that as a student body, that they've got a tough job to do. We all have to work together. We all have to do our part. Let's don't blame them so much. Let's really think about why they do the things they do, why they arrest me if I'm drunk in public.
And you've talked about people walking home alone at night. Is that a time that you would generally step in, and maybe it would be what people would call a conflict, where they would get a minor in possession ticket or something like that?
Well, for us, that's not really a conflict. That's part of what we do. I don't think it's fair for the Lexington Police Department to ever get to a point to where they say, we're going to take drunken publics to the infirmary, because then who's the infirmary dealing with when people are sick? There are some people that just have to go to jail. That's just the way it is. And we don't really pick and choose who goes to jail. They pick and choose. It's, if I've got a person and they've got a bunch of friends, and those friends are like, what, sir, we're trying to get him home, or we're trying to get him to the infirmary, we'll let them do that. If we feel like that's not the right thing to do, then we will arrest them. But we will always have your best interest at heart.
And how many MIPs do you think you give out over the course of a month?
I think it depends on the month. It really does. Especially once it gets warmer, people are partying more. We're hoping that people will start to party more in town, because we actually do feel like it's safer to party in town. But with that, comes a little bit more responsibility on the students' parts, because you can't really do in town what you do in the county. It doesn't work. But you can party in town. And, that's evident any weekend. If you come out, there are plenty of parties. It's just you have to party the right way. And you have to understand that when you do party, there comes a time where you have to be responsible and say, okay, we're done for the night. We'll go home. We'll try it again tomorrow.
So you're talking about responsibility, safety. What can Washington and Lee students to better their relationships with the police department?
Oh, I think we work on that every day. We really haven't had any bad things this year, I don't think. I think it's always the same thing. It's, oh my gosh, they arrest too many of us for drunk in Publix. I hear this thought mindset that some students have that I'd rather drive my car drunk than walk home. And I don't understand that at all. In fact, it bothers me a little bit because an MIP, the worst person that you might hurt is yourself. If you get behind the wheel of a car, not only may you hurt yourself, you may hurt your best friends, you may hurt my family, you may hurt someone else's family. So if you look at it as a whole, if you are coming home from a party and you've had too much to drink and you walk and you behave yourself and you're doing what you're supposed to, you'll get home. There's 1,700 students here. How many of them have had a negative encounter with a police officer when they were completely sober? How many of them have ever called the police and we didn't come? So we're a double edge. When we do something right for you, you love us. When we arrest you, you don't.
Understandably so. So what would you say you could do to change the stigma, I guess, of the bad cops? Nobody likes to get in trouble.
Nobody likes in trouble. What I would hope is that as a community, as your own little community, that you would say, you know what, we need them. They've got a really tough job to do. Basically, they do a really good job. We're never always going to get along and see eye to eye because it's kind of like I said, it's kind of like your parents. You want to have all this fun, and we're the reason that you can't have as much as you don't. And we completely understand that. So we don't look at any of it negatively because we understand that we have a job to do, and that's the way that we're going to do it.
Well, thank you for doing your job, Captain Miller, and thank you for joining us on the Rockbridge Report. Have a nice afternoon.